How Bizarre is intended for mature, open-minded audiences only. If you are easily offended, we suggest you turn this wacky shit straight off.
Okay. This is going to be a different kind of show. Really unlike anything that we have ever done on the show over the past damn near 500 episodes. And it's going to be heavy. I guess all the kinds of trigger warnings concerning death and murder, crime, all those things. We talk about this shit all the time, but this is going to be different because we have a guest joining us tonight. Now, for anyone that's caught up on all of our shows, you will remember that a few episodes back, I brought as one of a handful of terrible news stories, part of our news roundup, this one story. But this story took things to a whole new level of terrible, and that is the story of the Return to Nature funeral home in Penrose, Colorado. Now, Return to Nature was operating under the premise of being a green burial service, and they were also facilitating cremation services that were more environmentally sound. The funeral home opened in 2017, and it seems to have been doing okay for the first couple of years, but then they started having some financial issues, tax issues, not being able to pay their bills, and things were getting pretty bleak for them to the point where the crematory that they were working with, not all funeral homes have their own crematory, so they contract that out. Well, the one that they were using actually cut them off because they had missed too many payments. And rather than doing the sane and humane thing and either closing up shop or no longer offering these kinds of services, the owners of Return to Nature started stacking the bodies in one of their office buildings on the property. And they just kept stacking and kept stacking. Over 4 fucking years they were doing this. I suppose they were probably waiting for the money to come in, and then they were just going to deal with it. Now, there's a lot more details here, and we're going to, I'm sure, get to some of them when we get our guest on. But most of these bodies were kept in nothing more than a storage tub from the hardware store. And eventually, all sorts of chaos was starting to happen. And again, we'll talk about more of that when our guest is on. But it was only after workers and locals were starting to complain of a putrid smell that the place was looked into. And that's when no less than 190 bodies were found decaying basically onto the floor in this office space, this rundown office space at this point. It's so fucking horrific and it's hard to comprehend. And that's how we all reacted to that story. It was like, this isn't one of those things that you could even find a way to crack wise, and we didn't. It's a shocking fucking story. Now, after we posted that episode, longtime listener KD Surgery Jeff posted on our Facebook page that for the first time she had to pull over. I think she said she was driving at the time when she was listening, that she had to stop the show because she was crying, because she knew the story that we were talking about, and she knew it because her good friend's sister, who passed away a few years back, was one of the many that was entrusted to Return to Nature. Her friend Melissa, as we're calling her tonight, and we might talk about why we're not using real names. We might not. We're going to let Melissa take this wherever she wants to, but she's going to be joining us tonight, and I think it's probably time to just bring her on now.
Hello.
Is this Melissa?
Yes, this is Melissa.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Before we got you on, I gave a little background, and obviously we talked about the story of the funeral home, Return to Nature, a couple episodes ago. So our listeners know what we are talking about.
Okay.
So this is your platform. You can go wherever you want to go. I know you talked to Christopher before the show. He gave you the rundown. The show isn't live. I edit it before we put it up, and it won't go up for a couple of weeks. So if we or you head down a path that you decide you don't want to go, just let me know. Let us know. We'll shut it down. Nobody will be any the wiser. we don't expect you to know all the details about the case itself or have all the answers to any of our questions that we may be curious about. So we're just going to have a conversation about it and follow your lead. And I think the best place to start with that is to start with the story of your sister and tell us how you even came to be connected to this return to nature.
My sister was unfortunately killed, and we're still finding out if it was self-inflicted or otherwise. Her boyfriend. It was back in April 16th. And yeah, I had just hung out with her the day before, so I really don't think it was self-inflicted because she was totally fine.
Yeah.
But anyway, so we lost her on April 16th, and then we had to deal with all this, like her boyfriend stealing everything right away. Like we never even saw him because he didn't want to talk to us. Anyway, so within a couple weeks, we looked at a few places for cremation, me and my mom, and we were trying to stay like at a decent budget, but nothing, So we went to a couple of places. One was like super industrial, but they did it right there, which now looking back, very important that they did it right there.
Yeah.
But it was so like kind of ghetto, so I didn't want to do that to her. So then we were looking around and we find Return to Nature, and their website's talking about how they're like, it's really pretty, and they plant a tree and they do natural stuff, and like they don't embalm them, which is allegedly bad for the environment. Or I didn't really care about that part, but their website was really nice, and they plant a tree for the memory of your family member, and so we chose there.
Yeah, that would have been a stark contrast to the industrial. I mean, it makes sense why you would go that route.
Yeah, it was like pretty, and it seemed very like, honorable.
Yeah.
And we had gone to one other place and they were like giving my mom a hard time, saying that her boyfriend had to be there and stuff to sign off. And so they gave us a hard time. So then we went to Return to Nature. But yeah, my mom was the one that did everything through them.
The boyfriend had to sign off on your sister being cremated?
Yeah, they were trying to say it was, you'd be like blown away at how many people gave us a hard time. Oh, it's a common law marriage. They were only together a year.
God. What?
Yeah.
A year?
Wow.
Yeah, a year. And like he moved in right away because he was just a mooch, like because my dad had just died. So she had money.
I take it you never liked this guy. It doesn't sound like a good dude from the start.
Right from the start, I was like, this guy's just a mooch. Like, he's not going to work. I was, in that kind of relationship when I was really young. So I had already seen this kind of guy, and she's seen it too, but whatever. So he was just in there to take advantage of her, really. So they'd been together a year at the time. So yeah. So many people, like the police were telling us that we had to wait till I was the executor of the estate before we could do anything.
Okay.
So, and that took almost a month. So it was a lot of people trying to push their whatever knowledge or what they think of what common law marriage is and all this stuff. So that was the shitty part because we couldn't do anything.
But were they considering this guy, her boyfriend, to be the executor of the state? Like, was there already something?
Have to file because there was nothing showing that they claimed to be like married.
Yeah. So you were, are sort of in the same. Was he trying to be?
No, I don't think he's smart enough to even know.
Well, that is so fucking weird. Why would they?
Rights to all of it.
That is so strange.
He tried to take everything because he thought he had rights to all of it.
It was just everyone else was trying to convince you that he was the one that should be calling the shots, not him himself.
Yeah.
Huh,
well, he stole everything, so apparently he thought he was the one calling the shots.
Wow.
Yeah. So
you decided on Return to Nature.
Yeah, it just seemed really nice. It seemed like a nice place. You could look at the website and you're like, oh, that's really nice. And it was in Colorado Springs. So we went there. They said that they would take her body. It would take a couple days to like get the, what's it called? Permission from the coroner, like to get her body and permission and blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
and then they would send her up to Denver to cremate her. And then within 3 days, they called my mom back. Carrie Halford called my mom back. And
Carrie and John Halford, we should point out, are the owners of Return to Nature.
They were the only two working there. Yeah, like at that point, they had no other employees, and yeah. So my mom saw Carrie, and she said she seemed kind of like, I don't know. She said she kind of rushed her when she picked up the ashes. So she was a little sketchy, but I never got to actually. I never went. But as soon as we got the ashes, because it was only 3 days, which seems weird that they had to transfer all the way to Denver.
That's
and
fast.
Then all the way back. Yeah. And even still, I was like, there's not, like, it seems like we have that less ashes here than, like, my dog. It was weird.
Wow. Are you able to say about when this was that we're talking about, like when your sister passed or when you were turning her remains over to the funeral home? Like, when that was?
We took her, we chose there at the end of April of this year.
Oh, this year. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, so we got it back really quick, and it did seem sketchy, like right away. And it turns out it's probably cement. We don't know. But yeah, it seemed like a small amount. And I kind of compared it to my dad, who'd been cremated a year before, and way smaller, like, so yeah, we were kind of like already a little like, what's the word? Just not trusting it.
Yeah, you were suspicious. Even before you knew anything about this story, because this is a new story, as far as a breaking.
Yeah, it happened in October, like early October. And I happen to live, I'm probably going to give away too much information. It doesn't matter. I'm not going to say anything about, like, I don't see anything wrong with sharing about the Return to Nature stuff, right? So
yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty national, like hundreds of victims. So anyway, I live in Penrose. And I was driving by my sister's body every day for 6 months as it turns out. Yeah, every day when I go pick up my kid from school, I was driving by my sister's body in a building that hadn't really been used. So that's all they were doing, was taking them there.
So you were suspicious at one point, but at what point did you find out that something was actually going on? Was it when the story broke, or did someone come knocking on your door? How did you find out?
I found out probably sooner than like anyone in like the Springs, because we knew right away when there was like FBI and just all kinds of people in front of this. It's right next to our post office. Like, it's right off a busy road. So we all drive by there every day. So it's a small town, and everyone's like, what's going on there? So it was, I think, October 3rd, something like that. And at first they're like, oh, there's 3 bodies. And then so like, well, that's not that weird, And then the next day it was like 120, which
God.
Yeah, I was already like, my sister's in there. And my husband kept being like, there's no way she's in there. There's no way. And I'm like, no, she is. And then when it was up to 190, that's when I was like, she's definitely there.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So 190. I don't know. And it took a few days for them to get all the bodies out. And I would watch those bodies get drove by and just wonder if my sister was there.
Jesus.
In that van. Because then they took them all back up to Colorado Springs. So
yeah, it was such a horrifying scene that it was actually it was like the governor deemed it a state emergency.
Yes,
like it was an actual disaster. It was deemed a state disaster, and the initial responders, from what I read, came in and they could not really do anything because they were immediately getting ill, not just from the physical response of seeing that, but they were actually like, I read that one of the police officers that were one of the first responders got some sort of skin infection that like turned into some lesions or rash on her flesh. So they had to pull everybody out and do hazmats.
She was the first person. Yep. I heard about the first person that went in there through someone that knew her. And it was bad. And I heard there might be chemicals on the bodies, because it turns out later that they were trying to figure out how to dissolve them faster, because they're disgusting people. And so it might have even been chemical burn, not just normal body,
some sort of, yeah.
whatever. Yeah. And,
So did authorities contact you at this point, or do you just have a hunch? You're like, I think my sister was in there.
No, at that point, they were kind of just going, if you've used this funeral home, please contact us, fill out this form. And I happened to know one of the victim advocates, so she called me right away just to say, like, what are some identifying, like, tell me about your sister's tattoos and what color her hair was and things like that. So I did. And then they wound up, a freaking news reporter contacted my mom based on the obituary. My mom didn't even know. Like, I didn't want to tell her because it was pretty like horrible. So I hadn't told her yet, and the freaking news reporter, all nosy, called her. So
that's how she found out.
Found out.
Oh no.
Yeah.
God. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like there's so many levels to this, and when you say that they were probably dumping chemicals on, it's like, for some reason I had a reaction to that. It's like, but at this point, that's almost like it's just, there's so many levels of depravity that the fact that they wouldn't even honor the way that they were disposed of, or interred or cremated. These bodies were literally stacked. One of them, maybe a few of them, went back as far as 4 years. And
yes, I believe there was like 30 from 4 years ago.
Oh my God.
Like the place that these people had to go in their minds to be able to do this and sleep at night is so beyond comprehension. It's, at what point did you have actual concrete proof that this was that your sister was one of the people that?
It was sometime, I can't remember the exact date, but like my mom was called by the FBI and she's like, okay, so you identified her? And they're like, no, we can't tell you that yet. And of course so she called me up. I left work and went, and we had an FBI agent come and a coroner and just a victim advocate. And they came to tell us that they identified her because she was one of the really quickly identified ones.
Right.
Since she had been a newer death.
Right.
A lot easier, which a lot of the 2019 people seem to be identified pretty quickly too, which seemed really crazy to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were. So a lot of people were identified within the first like couple weeks, and there's still, I think, 40 that haven't been. But yeah, that's how we found out, was that they came and told us like very gently. And I'm a huge dork, so I was all excited that I saw the FBI badge because she like flipped it and was like, FBI, can we come in? I'm like, that's so cool. And I'm like, yeah.
Well,
I should be like,
so somewhere between shock and just, how else do we see an FBI badge except on TV and in the movies? Right, it is something that most of us don't see right there. Well, certainly not at our doorstep.
You're like, where's Scully and Mulder? Are they here?
Yeah, that's the only time we see that badge.
They probably investigate a lot better.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Well,
yeah, the way things have been going, I've just been like, my sister's probably laughing about this. Like, here is some more to add to my lifetime story because she watched all those crappy movies. And so that's the way I try to see the light side of it, I guess.
Well, it's amazing that you're even trying.
Yeah, I'm trying. I have nightmares all the time. And
of course.
Yeah. And I didn't even, like, there was people, God, that went to the courthouse the other day. And they saw pictures of the inside. And I was really glad. Yeah, I was really glad my mom was there and she decided to leave. And she was all upset that she didn't stay for the pictures. And all these people are super just having a hard time now. Like, they can't even look at a black storage bin without freaking out. And
no.
Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like this thing is, there's 190 victims that were not treated the way that anybody should be treated, but then it's all of the family, and then opening up old wounds, and anyone who has been to a funeral, whether no one likes a funeral, of course, but however, and a lot of people just refuse to go to them, and that's their choice. We all mourn, and we all have to deal with grief in our own way. But anyone who has gone through a handful of funerals, they'll usually agree that it's an important part. It can be an important part of that there's never really closure, but it's closing a chapter, and there is this thing you have a physical response to walking away from, and it's like, all right, onward. And then to find out that you didn't even have that, like you've been robbed of so many things. And in your case, you already had, death is always sad, but you had a very tragic and mysterious, like there's no resolve even in how it happened on top of that. And this just happened for you. So is there some sort of group support system for these people and you? Because this is a very specific trauma.
Yeah, there is. They're offering one at the hospice, like to do like a group, but mostly everyone just kind of like, and it's the nice part about Facebook is everyone's on there like talking each other through stuff. And, so yeah, a lot of them are very into like getting together and going to dinner and talking about the court. They're all about the court. I don't want to go to the court. Like, I already have my other court.
Yeah, you have so many things going on.
Plus, I have a full-time job, so you know, like a lot of these people are older and going all the time. But yeah.
Well, let's back it up.
They're all like.
Let's back it up a bit, because you mentioned that the ashes that you have may be cement. This is what we know. We know that the owners of this place were using bags of cement as ashes because they had to give people something so they wouldn't come looking, and the crematory had already cut them off for lack of pay. Do you don't know what you have? Is anything being tested? Like, is there a way of?
Yeah, my mom sent her half with the FBI, and I was supposed to bring mine to the coroner, and I never did. I'll be honest, because and so I assume it's cement. Yeah. And there's no way to test it, and I mean, otherwise they can test if it is ashes or is not ashes, but they can't test like who is it if it was
find out who it
perhaps another person.
Yes, you could mix it with water, try to build a wall.
A lot of people have put water in them to see if it turns into like a solid. And a lot of people have. He had apparently like 600 pounds of concrete in the building.
That's not a crazy test.
Yeah.
Jesus
yeah, when it
Christ.
first happened, my friend was like, don't add water to it, like, or anything weird. I'm like, why would I do that? And she's like, oh, because they're saying it's all cement. I'm like, oh. So I kind of looked at it, and I don't know, there's like some little white bits and stuff, but I don't know if they just threw in random stuff or. I don't know.
One woman, I saw one woman sharing her story on one of these news stories when I was initially researching this, and she had received, like over a year ago, maybe more, she had received what she thought was her loved one's remains. And there's a thing you can do where you can take a little bit of those ashes and mix it in with some tattoo ink. And she got that mixed in with her tattoo ink to do a tribute to this loved one, only to find out that she actually put cement into her flesh. And it's just like
a staph infection.
And there are so many of these kinds of stories. And this is the thing, like the owners had to have known that all of these things were happening as soon as they were like,
they don't care.
Forget about the trauma when, you know, they were ultimately caught. But like every step of the way was just such a cold-hearted fuck you to everybody already going through a very trying time. And it's like these are sacred ceremonial things, and if you don't care about that, like these people are fucking monsters. And it's interesting because that we're talking to you now, because this it is a new case, but the John Halford, is it Halford?
Yeah, or Halford, I'm not sure. I always say Halford.
He just was finally given charges, I think like a week ago, or maybe it wasn't that long ago. And they have charged him with over 200 different charges, including 190 counts of abuse of a corpse, 61 counts of forgery, 4 counts of theft, money laundering. There's all sorts of things. But the disturbing thing that I've been reading, well, the disturbing thing about what might happen to them in terms of, you know, their penalty, there aren't very strict rules for somebody who mistreats the dead. And it seems like this has to change those laws. And have you heard anything about what their potential punishment could be? Obviously, we don't know yet, but have you heard anything like that?
No, not yet. I do know. So there was a lady also in Colorado that was actually selling. Did you hear about that? Like, I forget the name of the funeral home. But she was selling body parts, like to donor, like whatever, for science and stuff.
That story sounds really familiar.
Yeah, it was like Grand Junction or something. Anyway, and they've been kind of like, people have been joining the group from that group.
Yeah.
But she was selling their body parts, which, I mean, at least she was like getting something out of it versus just being horrible and lazy, or whatever they're doing. But anyway,
that's exactly what it was. It was laziness.
She did not get any abuse of corpse because that wasn't a law yet. Because when it happened, it hadn't become a law. So I don't know what the charges for abuse of a corpse is. But anyway, she went to jail or prison for 20 years for like forgery, because she was forging these forms to say that the loved ones were okay with selling them. So she got 20 years for that.
That's good to know.
They're going to get at least like 20 years.
Because they have 61 counts of that.
In my opinion, but yeah.
And first-degree theft and money laundering, and that I know does come with stiff penalties. But Jesus Christ, the fact that we haven't come up with heavier laws for this is some pretty major shit. And again, the victims far outnumber just the poor souls that were not treated properly like human beings at all. The ripple effect of this kind of crime is so extensive that it's insane that we are just now starting to think about maybe we should think about these laws and make them a little bit
regulating this a bit. Yeah.
Well, apparently the Colorado has the most lenient like funeral home.
Yeah, that's why they were able to do it in the first place.
Yeah.
Not everybody.
It's insane. I had no idea.
A lot of people don't know, but these green funeral homes, they're not legal in every state. They're actually not legal in very many states. And that is tied to a lot of things. I think that tide is changing, but it's also, as you said, tied to very lax laws at all. And there aren't regulations. And you ask yourself, how the fuck could there not be regulations about burying or cremating or handling our dead loved ones' remains? It's like, but that's what it is. And that's, I think that this case is going to cause so many changes. I mean, how could it not? It fucking better. But
it better, yeah.
Where are you at now? Like, so you found out that your sister was one of these people that were horribly mistreated. Where did her remains go from there? Who I'm assuming this has been dealt with properly at this point.
Yes. They were, they had a good 4 or 5 funeral homes that volunteered to do it for free.
Oh, wow.
Since we already paid. Yeah. So we picked one that was very nice. My mom went and looked at it to make sure it was very nice. And then like the lady even came to like one of our grief, whatever it was called. She was very nice. So, so they did it for free. And then some people chose to opt to make sure they could see it be done. So they paid more out of pocket. But
I don't blame them for having trust issues.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, trust
issues. I might be wrong on it, but the other case with the lady that was selling parts, I don't think that was on a legit thing either, because I mean, with like getting a kidney or any kind of transplant, that stuff has to be frozen. That has a 12-hour process.
Oh yeah,
so,
no,
like,
it was like weird stuff like legs and stuff.
Yeah, it was like black market shit.
Yeah. That's some fucking creepy shit.
There's so many horrifying things going on that we don't want to know about, and you had to find out about so many horrifying things. And yeah, of course you've driven by, because you live locally, by the funeral home. You've driven by it and probably thought about your sister in one way or another, but you wouldn't. You already had the remains. You thought that chapter was closed. I can't imagine the mindfuck of that.
I guess maybe we should have another memorial. I don't know.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are, because like I said, this is opening up so many new wounds. It is like one person that experienced this, their loved one was not murdered. I think it was a natural death or maybe some sort of accident, but they said that when they, going through all of this was like losing, it was like, how did they word it? It was something like it's like finding out that your dead loved one was brought back to life just so they could be murdered. Like they're going through this horrible trauma that they can't even wrap their brains around. And I'm glad that there are these support groups, and I'm glad that people are reaching out. And it's amazing to hear that those other funeral homes are reaching out, because there are so many things. I feel like, I don't know, tell me what you think. Obviously, you're way more connected to this than just about anybody. Do you feel like there are a lot of things that fell through the cracks, a lot of people that missed an opportunity to catch this earlier on? Because I feel like when I'm going back, it's like there were red flags all over this place.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like if they weren't paying the cremation place, how did no one else hear about that? Like, shouldn't the coroner have been notified?
Yeah.
Things like that. So yeah, and like if I forget if they lost their license or something you would think the coroner would know about those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably one of many things that are going to change there. Like you said, this is one of those states that have lax funeral service laws. And I guess I imagine this is one of those things that could not have happened in Washington State, or it couldn't have happened in California. It's like this was a very specific place where it was allowed to happen. And I hope that this changes that.
I hope so too. There's one woman named Sherry. She's done news articles, so I know I can talk about it. But her daughter was 38 when she lost her. She was one of the 2019 victims. And anyway, she's all about like sending everyone reminders to bug our congressmen and talk to the licensure people. And she's like very like adamant about changing these laws, which is really commendable. That's where she's putting all her energy into. She's very like just doing everything she can and reminding everyone else to keep at it. And so I've sent a few emails and stuff to the licensed people, which are DORA. But
well, you mentioned obviously there's hearings going on for the criminal aspect of this. Is there any type of class action lawsuit concerning all the families?
Well, I don't know about class action. I know we joined one of the lawyers, and because there was a few lawyers that everyone was like kind of in between. So I don't know about. I assume we should have just done one all together, is what I thought would be best. Because I know we're not going to get any money.
I was just like well, who would pay?
Yeah.
Right. They owe so many other people money already, and then there's like 200 victims. And then...
I mean, like I believe you guys should have them $10 million. I just like who would pay it, like, unless they have some insurance, which I'm sure they fucking did not.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. My question was really about if you are involved with something that is actively something you have to participate in. But yeah, I mean, you guys are right. Where would that money even come from? I don't know how anything works, but this seems like there has to be some sort of organized lawsuit in the name of the families, the survivors of the victims. But yeah, what does that mean? Where does that come from? Who knows? Maybe it's a state thing. Maybe the state pays, because these were I can't help but think that when I was doing a little more research tonight, knowing that we were going to be talking to you, of course, and I just kept coming across all these little stories that popped up 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago. And it was like, how, like you said, why wasn't the coroner notified? Why wasn't some organization that should be overseeing all of these funeral homes and these services, even if just from an environmental standpoint or a hazmat or a safety, a disaster standpoint, why wasn't somebody looking into this shit years ago? So who knows?
Like
maybe there is a class action. Yeah. But
at least a yearly inspection. We go through, I think I work at a hospital and we have to do one every few months of some kind of inspection. And I work physical therapy, but they still like go through everything, seeing if there's expired friggin' tongue depressors. Like, why don't they have that for funeral homes?
Yeah.
To see that they're doing it correctly. Yeah.
That's a real deal too, because they have the same thing in dialysis too, and they mainly do it because it's a lot of blood. You know, everybody's opening blood.
Yeah, that makes
wherever
sense.
they're at, so it's biological hazard. You know?
It's
And
hazmat
so,
all over a hospital and a clinic. Yeah.
and the mortuary. We need Rob. Where's Rob?
I thought about Rob the whole time. Rob is an undertaker that we have on the show from time to time, Melissa. But yeah, it's something I kept seeing too was that a lot of people had noticed that this place years ago was starting to fall into a state of disrepair. Like even their sign out front was looking like haggard, and there was growth, weeds growing into the building. That alone is like,
I thought it was just a closed building. I didn't think they used it for anything, which is probably what they were going for. Because they didn't
That's
actually use
interesting.
it for like new customers, you know?
so
But I
describe.
remember,
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I remember when I was looking for funeral homes, it showed up as a Penrose address as well. So back in late April, I was like, oh, they have a location here in Penrose. And I didn't even think about it. Like, it's just like, I don't know, didn't put the two together at all. That it was like the crappy building that just kind of sits there. But I just assumed it was closed and they hadn't like changed the address, I guess.
Well, that's what I was going to
Uh-oh.
ask. I was having a hard time getting a picture of the layout of this company. Are there multiple properties, or is it all one
Just
property with
two, I
multiple
guess.
buildings?
Well, it's one company's, they had it listed with that address as Return to Nature, like I said, and then they had the Colorado Springs location, like downtownish, like southern Colorado Springs. And they had another location in Colorado Springs like a couple of years before, and I think it had something to do with them not paying their rent or something of that nature,
Yeah.
where they had to move again. So it's like they just never pay any of their bills, and yet they continue to be allowed to run. That part makes no sense either. Like, yeah.
Yeah, again, it's one of those things where it's like a lot of businesses, small businesses, run into financial trouble and they don't need someone looking into it other than the people that they owe money to, and maybe the IRS. Present company included with my small business. They still call me on a regular basis looking for their money. I got in trouble and people looked into me. It wasn't a big trouble, but I was selling art. I was running a small little craft cocktail bar for a while. I know we're kind of like running over the same old ground, but it just baffles me that there aren't organizations looking into, like, this is a different kind of business. This is not a store. This is not something that we need to look into what these people selling used cars are up to. This is a very specific type of thing. And anyway, so your sister has been finally put to rest.
Yes.
I'm really sorry that you had to go through this, and I'm sorry that you had to lose your sister at all, and that sounds like a tragic, and I know it sounds like we can't get into that.
Yeah. It's been a lot of loss of trust in authorities this year. And yeah, it's like you just have to double check everything, apparently. Yeah.
Yeah, a lack of trust in just about anything. I mean, there are so many things that you had to trust to have any of like these are, like I said, these are sacred things that were violated, and that's not an easy thing to come back from. I can only imagine.
No. Yeah, I wish I hadn't talked my mom out of going to a place where you could actually like watch we couldn't have an open casket, but at least we could know. But still, we wouldn't know she was in there. Like,
well,
so
yeah, no
did you guys
one could
hear?
have
Did you
ever
guys hear
have
about
known.
the person? They found a Army veteran in the funeral home that was supposed to have been buried with honors. Did you read that
I
article?
did see that.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then so they found his body, and so they exhumed the grave, dug it up, and they found someone like wrapped in duct tape in there.
I
It's
think
like they didn't even like, it's pretty cut and dry how to just bury someone and not be an asshole,
yeah.
but they couldn't even do that right. That's what really blows my mind. Like, I assumed everyone in that funeral home was meant to be cremated, but no, they still mess with the burial people.
Yeah,
That
when they
is
do
really
that
strange.
with honors, they typically give you a gun salute. So it's done by the VA. You typically.
Yeah.
And so yeah,
I feel like I
that's
read
wild.
that was one of the specific charges. Like there are 200 charges that just John Halford has received. They haven't, I don't think they've officially charged Carrie Halford yet. They did They did something strange with John. That he had, I think, $1 million bail, and they lowered that to $100,000 or something.
Yes. Yes, they were both at 2 million originally, and now they're both at 100,000. They just had carries today, and the actual like next court date is sometime in March, where they're going to have them both there, and there's going to be, I don't know if that's when they'll just do the charges. I assume they'll have a jury and all that stuff. But so far, what they've really done is just go like, do we have enough evidence? And obviously they do.
Yeah. Holy shit.
So yeah, then the next court date's not till March for whatever reason. But
do you plan on being a part of any of that?
I might go to that one.
Yeah.
Because at least it's far enough in advance. The thing that sucks about my work is I have like a patient load every day, and so if I don't find out until like the week before, it's hard to like go.
Yeah.
Actually, I didn't go to Carrie's because I had a tattoo appointment, which I'm glad I didn't, because I heard about the pictures and I've already had enough nightmares. I don't need to see.
Yikes.
And then just the description of it, my brain's active enough to.
Sure.
Well, and the reality of it is you gotta live your life. I mean, it's easy to say that, but it's interesting. I bet there are so many people that are connected to this story. And just going back to, we all deal with grief in our own way. There are probably family members that have been to every single trial, have been to every single thing, and they won't miss it. And there are some that couldn't go to any of it. It's all correct. Nothing is incorrect here, because this is such a fucked up story. And these people, human beings, we talk about, we are almost to 500 episodes, how many podcasts we've done. And we have covered so many things, mostly dark, troubling stories. And this was, a few episodes ago, this was for us just another one of these stories. And then Katie, should I use Katie's name? Should I change?
Sure. Katie's both of our names are pretty common.
We've already talked about that on the show. I guess we can't change that. Katie reached out to us and said that she has a connection to this story. And I remember, I won't speak for everybody, you guys can weigh in too, but you probably had a similar effect where it's like, oh, wow, these stories, it's not that we don't understand that they're actual humans going through these things, but when you're going to talk to somebody that's directly connected to it, it does make you realize how we kind of just blow through some of these, even the crazy, heavy stories without really giving credence to that these are human beings going through this. Yeah. And it really knocked me back for a bit thinking about that. And I appreciate you bringing that humanity to the show, because we've never done this in almost 500 years. We've never really had, I was saying before you got on the show, we've never really had anything like this. It's a direct connection to one of these stories that they come and go, but this is a lasting ripple effect on so many people.
When you just said 500 years, it made me feel like a vampire.
Did I say 500 years?
You sure did.
500 episodes.
Feels like to my liver, it's been 500 years.
Your family has been through two things that nobody should have to go through. One, like, it's just unfathomable, like hard to even imagine. The risk of asking what might just be a dumb question, how are you guys doing?
Well, it just depends on the day. My mom is not doing as well as me. I guess I work, so it keeps my mind off of things, and I have to stay strong for my son. So I definitely just recently started doing better, I guess. I do have a lot of nightmares.
Yeah.
A lot of nightmares where I just can't sleep at night. But yeah. Bad. I'm angry all the time.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it. Yeah. I don't think I'll be at rest until they're in jail and he's in jail, and I've even had people like, would your sister really want you to fixate on getting him charged? I'm like, yeah, I think she would. Like, people, want me to just let it go. No.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
I don't
So,
think you
that
really have to
actually
worry
happened.
about them doing time. I'm pretty sure they're going to be doing
Oh, they're
prison
gonna,
time.
yeah. I
No
should hope so. I'll be
questions
so
asked.
pissed if they don't.
Right.
Man, yeah, let's
they're,
get a
they're
team
just
together.
disgusting people. They read a bunch of the text, so that's kind of. They put some of them in a one of the articles, but one of them was like, "Oh, I got people juice on me.
Oh my
Can
god.
you order me a cheeseburger? I'm gonna have to take a bath when I or a shower when I get home." Like
What
that's
what
just
what
they didn't care.
what do you mean?
Like he
What
ordered a
texts?
cheeseburger. They would show the text between John and Carrie in like they showed him in they like
Oh,
read them out
right.
loud in the court, and then they
Jesus.
reported some of them in like the newspaper or whatever you want to call it these days. But yeah, like of what a jerk he was, and that he had to figure out how to dispose of the bodies, and
Joking about
he was
getting
talking about this
people
like
juice
yeah,
on him.
yes, yep, that he's
Mhm.
gonna have to take a shower because he had people juice on him.
Jesus
So yeah,
Christ.
they didn't care at all. And then apparently when he found out there was 190, he's sent her a text that said 190. What is wrong with me? Like he just didn't even keep track. Like he was
Wow.
just yeah, it's super dark. So he should not be the kind of person. Neither of them obviously should be allowed near any human beings ever again. Just because clearly there's something wrong with them.
Well, that's the
Okay.
thing is that you wonder. I mean, it seems like this place kind of was working at least for a little bit, or am I wrong there? It like was it just
oddly
a
enough,
disaster
it
to begin
was
with?
2021. 2021 they had employees and people actually got cremated that year. So there was bodies laying around 2019 and 2020, and then they were doing good. So maybe they did good before that too. And then they went back to stacking bodies. It's really odd.
It's just like, at what point do they make that decision rather than closing their business and doing the right thing and admitting we can't do this, so we have to give whatever remains we have on our premises, we have to give them over to somebody else, and we have to just cut our losses with our business and move on. When they made that decision to just save a few of those bodies, and I know that term is even too kind for what they were doing, but it started with 3 and then 5 and then 15 and then how, like it I'm just trying to get my brain around.
Think this was an idea.
What
Like,
increment did they adjust their brains to accepting that and dealing with that and saying, well, we've got this many, we're going to keep it going? Were they always sociopaths? I can't get my brain around it.
That's kind of where it lands. It's like where it goes from professionalism to a psychopath.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like
they definitely got
like,
there, whether they started or not. They got there.
Rob, Rob's our he's a great guy. We went to school with him. He's a mortician. He's a professional by all means, 100%. If I were to pass away tomorrow, I would have nothing more than to have him work on my body, for the afterlife, whatever.
That's sweet.
But
That's sweet.
There comes a point where that goes away, and you now are a psychopath. Now you have 100 bodies stacked up in the back corner, and you're, ooh, I got people juice on me,
Yeah, and they're
See,
just throwing them wherever.
that's next
Some of them are
level.
duct tape. They don't care.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's just. I hope they get life sentence. If not,
I hope so too.
something else.
But yeah, and then you throw in like, why did you throw in a random body into a grave? Like, why? It makes no
Right.
sense. They're
No, it
just sick. They probably like thought it was funny or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey,
I would assume there had been like several bodies, so they try to get rid of a couple or something. But no, they just threw one random person in there. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. Yep, and yeah, I wondered that too. I'm like, how? And then how are you ever gonna? Are you gonna burn the building down? That would have been.
Well, that was my next
only-
question. Is it still standing? Has this building been?
No, it was supposed to be demolished today, or started to be demolished. Apparently, it's so disgusting that they're gonna have to do it like a special way and like do it slowly.
Yeah.
To dispose of the hazardous materials, because there was like 2 inches of decomposition,
Yeah.
like 2-inch thick,
God.
like to walk through. It was so slippery that they had to put down cardboard.
Wow.
Yeah.
I read that the people that were, once they were in their hazmats, even in the hazmats, and train people to do this, they had to work in 2-hour shifts because it was such a dangerous environment to be in as a biohazard situation that they had to work in 2-hour shifts and then swap out with other workers. That's
that's who I feel most bad for, honestly. Like, if anything, they should be charged with ruining these people's lives, because
the things
those
they
are
had to
people,
see and deal with.
yeah, they're gonna have nightmares for the rest of their lives.
Well, it's
Let alone
because
seeing pictures. They saw it and smelled it, and
for sure.
like children in piles and everything like that. Like, nah,
Well,
just
what gets me is that I know that they didn't murder anybody, but in
We
the
don't
same
know.
sense, well, that's true too. You never do know.
Yeah.
But it seems to me like just the disrespect for the bodies. I mean, it should be almost as bad as murder.
It should be.
It feels like it should be pretty fucking serious. But it's interesting, Lyle, that you said something about murder. In a weird, I don't know, maybe this has been resolved, but in a couple of the stories I came across, John Halford has been tied to, or at least suspected of being tied to, a missing person. Do you know anything about
Oklahoma. Yep. Yeah, I mean, everyone has talked about it in the like group. How have y'all not brought this up? Clearly he's a sketchy dude. And he was at once there was a lady, I don't remember her name, but it was in Oklahoma, and she just went to go shopping or something like that in the daytime, and she disappeared, and he was the last person she was supposedly go see. I think she worked with him or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, she disappeared, and he was the suspect. I don't know how hard they looked into it.
Yeah. I didn't see anything about that in these new charges, but I didn't read all the charges. I mean, there are 200, and that it's Who knows what these people were like before this?
Be some of the unidentified bodies might be murder victims. Who knows?
Yeah.
There's still 40 they haven't identified. So
really,
mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. 40.
Yeah. 30 to 40 is what they said. There's a lot of people at this point that are giving their own DNA to see if it'll match.
Oh wow!
Like their parent.
Yeah.
But then it's like, okay, now we know. God knows what they put in graves. Like, you're gonna dig up every grave. That's the only way you can know.
Wow,
like,
that is a whole new element to that. And that's true. You know, even if their loved ones weren't one of the many that were being just stored in that facility, who knows that they were treated the way that they were supposed to be treated at all? You know, there could be a mass grave back there. Is there any? Are they looking into that? Are they like doing some sort of ground penetrative radar or anything like that?
About it. They don't share any of that stuff with us either. So
I suppose they wouldn't.
Yeah.
That would be my concern, is like body stack. You know what I mean? Because some cemeteries do it. It's not now, but like back in the day, like when they had it over, you know, like some plague come through, you know, a village, that sometimes they would just double stack graves, triple stack graves in the graveyard because they didn't have enough room, you know.
It is hard to imagine that these people were just doing everything by the book before they stopped and then started doing. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to imagine that there isn't more to the story that we don't know. Maybe we never will. Maybe they're not looking into it, but
they really should, though. But yeah,
those grounds, everything that they had their hands on should be being investigated thoroughly, and maybe it is, but I haven't come across any of that information.
No, they haven't told any of us about any of it. But the fact that they did look into one grave, at least because of that, now they know that there's a very strong likelihood. And there could be multiple. I would have thought, like they said, they probably would have put multiple bodies in each grave, but they didn't with that one. So who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of thought, I just like the whole time when people were freaking out about, well, my loved one was buried, but what if they're in there? Why would they do that? Oh, well, sure enough.
Yeah.
Wow. God.
Yeah. And I thought people were insane for thinking 2019 bodies would be in there too. Like,
yeah. Like,
there's no way you're part of this. Holy shit, you are. What the hell?
I can't remember. How did they get busted? How did they get taken down?
They everyone kept reporting that it really stank. And so they kept blowing it off, kept telling everyone, oh, it's probably a dead deer or whatever. And then the one lady that she went in there first. She was the first one to be like, no, we're going to go investigate. And I think she just kind of glanced in there at first and knew there was bodies. And then they had to do like a search warrant, of course. So then they were supposed to meet John Halford there the next day, and he's like, "Oh yeah, sorry it smells. I'm working on taxidermy or some bullshit." And they fled to Oklahoma instead of meeting the police there.
Wow.
So yeah, and that was early October, like October 3rd or whatever.
Mm.
And then for whatever reason, they kind of knew where they were in Oklahoma, but they were still like working on getting, because I remember they were still in Oklahoma when the FBI told us that they had my sister. So it was a few weeks.
Well,
Mm.
you would figure as the case goes on, the more hopefully answers that you'll get. I'm hoping that
I would
like
hope so.
with throughout the case, you know, those things will get brought up, and hopefully they will bring in more manpower to go along the property with cadaver dogs and stuff like that.
They have
and be
to.
able to exhume bodies to
Yeah.
be able to match up with people, just to set people's conscience at rest.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, pretty much everyone that used them is just like waiting to hear, and like they don't believe they have their person, or maybe they did check and they have concrete and they haven't been identified yet, so yeah, a lot of people are missing, I think.
It's one of the craziest stories in a long, long time, and of course, it's getting international attention. Has the media or anything tried to track you down? I mean, the only way that you ended up on our show is because you have a friend that listens to the show. But have people tracked you down to get your story?
I've had a couple, like, it was right after we found out that she was there. I had a news interviewer contact me, and I didn't want to talk to him after what they did to my mom. I was like, fuck you.
Yeah.
I was kind of turned off by news people after that.
Sure.
And a lot of people, I feel like the same like 4 or 5 people in the grief group are the ones that keep doing interviews. I'm like, whatever.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Let them be the spokespeople for the group.
Yeah, there's
because it is
some that are
important that
very,
y'all have a
like,
voice.
adamant, so go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, so people can do it.
And then as far as that, otherwise, the only other news person I've talked to was like this guy. I think his name's Tyler. Anyway, he's putting together, like, he wants all of our loved ones' pictures so that he can like humanize it. But that's more for like trying to change the law.
Right.
Not so much because I'm like, we should show a slideshow of our families in court. Not that they'd probably care. Just so they can see them as people instead of just objects or whatever.
Right. Well, they might.
Yeah.
They might care. They did a similar thing in the Jeffrey Epstein case. You know, they let the victims and the survivors of the victims come in and do that. I think that that's an important part of our legal system. It's an interesting part of our legal system because it has no bearing on the case at that point. It's a humanity thing, and it is a potential closure. But there's no way in hell that this is not going to end up being a multi-part documentary series on Netflix or HBO. Those people are going to come looking at some point. Do you think that you're going to be interested in telling your story through that kind of means, or is that?
I don't know. I like this because I don't have to. No one has to see me.
Yeah,
I don't have to worry about my makeup or anything.
it's
like,
a whole different
either.
thing when you got a camera crew in your house for sure. Yeah.
oh, that podcast.
Yeah.
No, I might. I'm more concerned about my sister's whole story,
Sure.
honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
I only ask
yeah,
because again, it's this thing where it's like a humanizing thing, where we watch true crime. You know, we're true crime fiends in this country, especially, and this there's no way this won't be some sort of major story, a major documentary series.
That's true.
And
I do want my sister to be part of it, as far as like,
yeah.
See my beautiful sister that got thrown in a freaking building, to rot.
Well, and the
Yes.
added aspect of, your sister's separate tragic story, maybe that will be resolved by then. I don't know what else to say. I don't know what else to ask. Do any of you have any questions for Melissa before we move on?
Just thanks for sharing your story. Just a crazy one. One that's hard to believe. It's just
It
hard
is.
to believe it happens,
Yeah,
Yep.
I don't have any questions. I mean, I just recently lost my dad, and we had him cremated, and it was one of those things that was really hard to find a place that would do it reasonable. I think in
Yeah.
town, in town here was like, I want to say $3,000 to $4,000.
Yeah, we spent that much on my dad was about 5,000 and
Yeah.
he had died from COVID, so we were able to get it paid for by like emergency something.
Oh,
Mm.
nice.
So we
Well, that's
kept
good.
just adding on more shit. We're like, I'll take that urn and I'll take that necklace and we'll take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, when it came to my sister week, we didn't have an extra $5,000 laying around, so
No, yeah,
it
we
wound
ended
up
up
being, yeah.
we ended up going out of town to a small town, which is Kashmir, Washington, and they ended up doing, I think, for $1,500.
That's about Return to Nature was
Uh,
1,400.
I was gonna say Return to Nature was offering lower prices than usual, and I guess I don't know. That was
Only like a few $100s more in hindsight. Like,
yeah.
yeah, and the like whatever I called the other place was, I think, cheaper.
Oh,
It
really?
was cheaper.
I didn't
Yeah,
open the
the
ashes.
industrial place.
Yeah, the
I
industrial.
didn't open his ashes, but I know that when I picked up the box, it was a little flimsy, and I was kind of scared that it was going to pop open, so I just kind of set it back down.
Yeah, I'll say most of my dad's in a box still, and I need to do something. I don't know. Spread them somewhere, I guess.
Yeah, I think my mom, her wish is to keep his around until she passes, and then mix them together, and then go dump them off somewhere.
That's a good idea. That is nice. Yeah, I figured I'll do my dad and my sister together. So
Yeah.
somewhere nice, maybe a nice pretty laker.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, and again, that's such a sacred and ceremonious thing that you've all been
I'm glad we
robbed
didn't
of.
spread freaking cement.
It's so cold and
Yeah.
tragic. But I'm glad that you have those remains now, and you can do what you want with them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and I'm glad I didn't get a tattoo too.
well, I was thinking about
Yeah.
that poor girl with the tattoo. I was like, I hope that she gets the actual ashes and remedies that. I don't know if you can.
It's a touch up.
I don't know if you can pull out the cement. Good Lord.
I don't know. I know my tattoo artist was like, I'm not doing tattoos with ashes ever again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
What my family did was, I think with my uncles, is they took a little vial, and everybody got a little vial of, of our uncles.
Mm-hmm.
And, to do what you want with it, take it, and you could, take it and spread it, or just wear it, as a necklace
Yeah.
kind of deal, which is pretty cool, until I heard what Chris did with his father.
Yeah, we had that Undertaker on. And it was right after my dad passed away 2 years ago, and I picked up my dad's ashes in that cardboard box, and I didn't know what to do with them. Like I was telling the guys, I would like put them in the garage, say hello when I walk in, smoke a joint or whatever. But hi, Dad, walk back in. But I didn't even want to open them and look at them. And Rob said, the Undertaker we had on came on and said, they offer this great service called, now I can't remember the name of it, but basically you ship the ashes off and they form these beautiful little river rocks out of them.
Oh, that's
And-
cool.
And I really,
it was
I'm
cool.
looking at it right now. They're on the shelf, but it really changed it from something I would avoid to something I enjoy seeing. You can pick it up and it's safe, and you feel like you're handling any kind of remains. It just looks like beautiful river rocks.
Well, that's
So-
a really good idea.
Yeah. Partingstone.com.
Oh,
It's
cool.
expensive, but it's cool.
We should have them be a sponsor at this point. We have mentioned that
should.
company so many times, and we have had proof. Like listeners have actually reached out to us to say that they looked into doing that for their own loved ones' remains. I really think it's a cool business. Well, Melissa, should we say goodnight here?
Yeah.
Or,
It's my bedtime. Past my bedtime
Okay.
since it's later here.
Right.
Yeah, oh, that's right. It is later for you. Well, thank you so much again for sharing your story, and let us know. Keep us posted aspects of the
Yeah.
investigation,
Yeah.
and I wish you
Hopefully
all
I
the
have
best
news
with
in a
that.
few weeks or so, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it
Well-
was nice meeting you all.
Yeah.
Nice meeting you too.
Have a
thank
great
you.
night.
Good night.
Yeah.
You too.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Was the room they were stored in like just a regular old office room?
Yeah, some of them were putting
Oh
tubs
my
and shit,
God.
dude.
Yeah, no,
They
they
need to get a
were.
cadaver dog
Yeah,
to
like I
get out
said,
there and
hardware.
start
They went to the hardware store and got like those big Rubbermaid tubs that
Yeah.
you'd put like tools or dog food or something out in your yard.
Yeah, there's probably chopped up bodies in those fuckers and buried on the property.
Mm-hmm.
That's fucking crazy.
You know there
200.
is. I mean, there's
Yeah.
got to be,
So you
dude.
think it was just like a shitload of those tuppers?
Oh,
just like-
oh yeah, and
just
probably
like
Well, like
a
more.
Melissa
full of
said,
them?
some of them were only wrapped in duct tape. Some of them were
Oh,
wrapped in
God.
saran wrap. Some of them were just not really in anything. They were just
out in the air.
substance.
Gross.
You know. What did she say? 4 inches?
Two-
2 inches or 4 inches
inches.
of
2 inches of,
of
human.
human sludge?
Yeah, but that's
the
just
human
like
sludge. Yeah.
I can't.
think
I
of a
just.
zombie movie.
We've talked so much about this, and I've researched so much on it, and we heard all that firsthand. You know, this is not a story I think any human being should ever really get their brain around. It's too fucking crazy. It's too
It's
sick.
morbid.
It's one of the
It's really-
sickest, most
Yeah.
deranged stories I've ever fucking heard of.
Oh, when I worked at Hastings, we would frequently get a whole bunch of free books because they'd send like these paperbacks like that didn't sell for whatever reason, that you rip the cover off and send it back to the company, you get credit for it.
Right.
So we would just like take these like garbage bags full of paperbacks home. And so we got a lot of like true crime books for some reason. There's a lot of those that just like didn't sell or whatever. And the most horrifying ones for whatever reason were the ones that were focused on just like shenanigans at funeral homes.
Yeah.
You know what I
wow.
mean?
Huh.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the stuff about serial killers or anything like that. Some of the most like shit that you remember, you're like, yeah, I remember that was really fucked up. The funeral home stuff. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
You guys, okay, like super dark fucking thought here, but I could not stop thinking about if they cared so little for bodies and how they disposed of it. It's real possible other things were happening to those bodies. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Like
100%.
just
Well,
the dark-
especially what they're joking around about it. Yeah, God knows how they were treating those bodies.
What I
Mm-hmm.
was going to say is the other Colorado one, or the other instance, the people were like
Selling body
jarring
parts.
fucking cock and balls.
Yeah.
You know, they had jars of like fucking dicks, fucking like in jars, you know, and stuff like that. And they were selling body parts.
Yeah,
like
these
on
are
the
like
black
Ed Gein
market, just-
type weirdos in
crazy
those
shit.
cases.
You know,
That's
the thing that
fucking
came to
crazy.
my mind was the thought of their laws, you know, because I think in Washington state, if that would have happened, the laws would have probably said, okay, you go into, you know, death row, whatever. And in my mind, I was just thinking the opposite of what ours was. And it was probably the Mr. The horse guy,
Mr. Hands.
Mr. Hans.
Mr. Hands. Because at the time, there was no law to it, right? Bestiality was illegal, you
Mhm.
know?
Is
But
that
after
true?
that case, it made
Well,
it illegal.
bestiality wasn't legal, but it didn't come with any kind of real stiff. It was animal cruelty, and you would, you know, usually pay a fine.
Sure.
But
A slap on the hand.
in more ways than one. All right, well, let's get on out of here. Tune in next week. We'll be talking about 9/11. And until then, you know, do whatever you need to do to feel better about after that one. I'll see you guys next week.
Talk to you next week, guys.
I
Good night.